What's going on, everyone? This is the Noah Gillian Show, and I, of course, am your host, Noah Gillian. So happy you decided to join in today. It is the 13th of March, 2022, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the beginning of the legal tampering period in the NFL and discuss what happened with the Eagles and where they go from here. So before we get into the show, please hit that subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please give us that 5-star review. It only takes a couple seconds and would be much appreciated. Also, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram. The handles for YouTube viewers are right here on the screen. For people listening, you can find them all in the description below. Definitely feel free to give us a question, any kind of shout outs like that. We will be sure to answer them on the show. And without further ado, let's just get right into it. All right, so the legal tampering period in the NFL, as it's known, has officially begun. And this is when players can agree to contracts in principle with teams where they decide on playing next season. Free agency still doesn't open here for a few days. However, the legal portion of their tampering is open. This is what they like to call it, kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of phrase. But nonetheless, it is beginning and it's underway. And of course, anyone that's been following the Eagles has known that this was going to be an offseason of change. And more specifically, during the free agent market, it's been a number of key free agents are going to be hitting the market this offseason. It's going to lead to quite a bit of turnover for the Eagles. The good news, though, for Eagles fans is that most of the offensive weapons are under contract and locked up for next season. So Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, they're all under contract for next year. So one of the NFL's most potent offenses in the league last year should be returning to form once again next season. A majority of the turnover, though, will take place on the defensive side of the ball. A number of key contributors from the Eagles' Super Bowl run are going to be finding new homes. And that's something that we'll get into on this episode. Not all of the Eagles free agent players have signed already. But as we're recording this, the tampering period opened today. So, we're about 7-8 hours in and there's already been some activity. But we do have some stuff to go in depth here. So starting off on the defensive side of the ball, probably the biggest free agent that the Eagles had, one of the best players on the market at their respective position, was defensive tackle Javon Hargrave. He ended up testing the market and he was looking for a big payday and he got it. Hargrave is going to sign with the San Francisco 49ers on a 4-year, $84 million deal. Just absolutely congratulations to Hargrave. He had monster seasons while he was in Philadelphia, and it's just really good to see him be able to cash in and get that money. Obviously it's going to be a big loss for the Eagles in the middle of their defense. You hope that last year's first round pick Jordan Davis can really step up and step into a larger role. And hopefully provide an impact like Javon Hargrave did. Obviously, we expect Howie to address the position as well during the draft this year and potentially even in free agency. No news as of yet, but that is going to be a position of value for Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles. So losing him definitely hurt, definitely stung, but I think the price tag that he got from San Francisco was something that the Eagles were just not willing to go to. And in terms of your team building, your philosophy in something like that, do you really want to tie up that much money to a defensive tackle, an older defensive tackle at that, when you're expected to dish out big money on your quarterback this offseason? Is that something you can really afford to do? You can maybe have one defensive tackle on a big money contract like that, but then when they start piling up, that's when it does start to get a little questionable. In that right. So I think it was smart for the Eagles not to go to that figure. to bring Hargrave back. Nothing against Hargrave as a player, one of the best defensive tackles in the league. He's top 5 in a numerous amount of statistics and just impact in general, just watching the game. So I think that was a tough loss for the Birds, but one they kind of expected to see go. It was good to see him get that big money. And then the next player that we'll get to here that ended up leaving for a payday was linebacker T.J. Edwards. He is going to be leaving the Birds, obviously, and going to Southside, Chicago Bears on a 3-year, $19.5 million deal. About $12 million of that is guaranteed. So, like I mentioned with the last player, Javon Hargrave, hopefully both of these losses can be offset by the steps forward from last year's draftees, Jordan Davis, and then also third-round pick Nakobe Dean. A lot of people, myself included, were very, very excited about the prospect of getting Nakobe Dean. He ended up going in the 3rd round to the Philadelphia Eagles and was just a great pick. Didn't play a lot last year. He showed some cameos in some blowout games, especially against Tennessee. That was one game where he really showed out and had a really, really good game and just showed you what he could be. I think that having him redshirt almost for a year and just learn, take it in, get his body right, physically being able to play at the NFL level. I'm hoping that is going to, be the differentiator. I expect the Eagles to go out and maybe pick up another linebacker. They obviously lost linebacker Kazir White as well. He's a free agent. I haven't seen he's signed anywhere yet. So, there's always potential to bring him back. However, you are looking at Nakobe Dean potentially starting at your middle linebacker position, which, he's proven to do at an elite level at the college level. So it'll be interesting to see if he can do it as well at the NFL level. I'm really excited for that. I'm hoping that him and Jordan Davis can really take big steps forward, and what the Eagles think of these two players will be evident based on what they do in the offseason. If they don't address the linebacker position in terms of a middle linebacker and inside linebacker, or if they don't spend an exuberant amount of resources on the defensive tackle position, then you can be sure that they are very confident in the steps that Davis and Dean can take in their second seasons in the NFL. So overall, I personally, believe in these guys. I think Jordan Davis had an up and down year last year, really started strong, and then an ankle injury, I think, kind of derailed his season. He really didn't have an impact when he came back. So I think he's going to have an even better year healthy, hopefully coming into the year, hopefully shed a little bit of weight and just be quicker on his feet. And then Dean, just that extra year of tape, being able to watch TJ Edwards go to work. TJ Edwards led the team in tackles, was one of the great finds for Howie Roseman, an undrafted free agent who turned himself into a very, very good inside linebacker and got a good payday with the Bears. So those are the two big guys that have gone so far. Other big names that have not yet signed, CJ Gardner-Johnson and James Bradbury in the secondary have both yet to sign. The Eagles are making a big run at Gardner-Johnson. They're gonna try to get him back in camp. And it's going to be interesting. Another move that went down today, safety Marcus Epps, the strong safety for the Birds this last year, played more snaps than any Eagle on the defense. He's gone. He's going to be signing with the Las Vegas Raiders on a 2-year, $12 million deal. So you just have another piece missing. I think letting Epps go is definitely, going hand in hand with the Eagles' pursuit of Gardner-Johnson. I think they really want him back. And that's not just me saying. I think they've said they really, really want him back. He wants to come back. But at the end of the day, he wanted to test the market. He wanted to see what kind of money was out there. At the end of the day, I think he gets a big deal. Safety Jesse Bates of the Cincinnati Bengals ended up signing for the Atlanta Falcons today. I believe it was about 4 years, $60 million. So I can see him in a similar deal to that. And I think it's something the Eagles definitely need to exploit. And they definitely need to go above and beyond to make happen, especially with losing Epps, potentially losing Bradbury on the second in the secondary. And then as well, last Friday, the news comes out, Darius Slay has been granted permission to seek a trade. His agent has been granted permission to go do that. So you're talking about a whole secondary in flux, potentially. Obviously, Slay's still under contract for one more year. So He should be there during training camp, but he wants an extension past this year. I get it. I do. I would want more money outside of 1 year too. Like at the stage of his career, you don't need to be playing on any more prove it deals. He's proved what he can be. So I just think that makes the addition of, or the re-addition of, Gardner Johnson massive. I think it'll be huge, and I think Howie's going to get it done. I do think he's going to be back in the Eagles. He's one of the best free agents on the market. He's going to have plenty of suitors, but I do think at the end of the day, Howie realizes the value of Gardner Johnson, and he brings him back. The last departure that we'll talk about here, offensive tackle Andre Dillard is expected to sign with the Tennessee Titans. A lot of maybe around the trade deadline, there was a little bit of flack thrown Howie Roseman's way for not trading Andre Dillard. You already knew he was an unrestricted free agent come the end of the season. Obviously, he wasn't playing a lot. Jack Driscoll seemed ahead of him in the pecking order. Obviously, when Lane Johnson was out, Driscoll was getting a lot of time at the right tackle position. So, kind of a bummer that he ended up leaving for nothing when, he maybe could have traded him, but Howie's always valued the depth on the offensive line. I think just having him on the team last year was more important than any potential draft assets they could have gotten by moving him. And I agree, at the end of the day, he leaves and he goes to sign with the Tennessee Titans, but, the Eagles are still set offensively on the offensive line. I bet you they're going to go after the position hard in the draft. They're always looking to replenish and restock, especially with how, the attrition that goes on the offensive line throughout the course of a season. It's going to be crucial. It's going to be big time for them. So he's another guy that ended up leaving, but it's not all bad news. However, it is not all bad news. A couple of franchise stalwarts will be returning to the team. Center Jason Kelce announced today that he will be re-signing with the Eagles for another season. This is just massive news. Jason Kelce, a first ballot Hall of Famer when he does end up retiring from the game of football, is just going to be, it's so clutch. And, he's been toying with the idea of retiring for multiple years now. It hasn't just been this offseason. It's been the last couple off seasons. And I think the step that Jalen Hurts took this year was a big reason in why Kelce decided to run it back for another year. I think he thinks that this offense is good enough, give the defense enough help, and I think they're going to be able to make another run at the Super Bowl. At the very least, they're going to be probably favorites in the division going into next year, and a definite threat to hoist the conference championship trophy once again. So that's just massive news for the Eagles offensive line. That probably means that Cam Jurgens is going to move into the guard position. This is going to kind of go hand in hand, but Isaac Seumalo obviously was the right guard for the Eagles, was a Pro Bowl alternate, had a phenomenal year. He is probably going to be gone. That's been one thing that a lot of people have mentioned. He's going to get a big money deal. Just had a massive year, and he's going to be able to cash in on that. So I love that for Seumalo, who's been a great player for the Eagles for a number of years. So he's earned that payday. But like I mentioned, that's probably going to move Cam Jurgens, who the Eagles took in the second round of 2022 draft, to guard. And it's going to be interesting to see if Stoutland can get him ready to play guard at the NFL level. He was already a guy that was in that Kelce mold of an undersized center, mobile center. And if Kelce did decide to retire, Jurgens would have slid right in. However, there is a lot of faith that Jurgens can play the guard position. And in that case, you have a cheap player who you can plug right into the line and you're hoping for elite production out of. That's one thing where I think the Eagles are going to end up bringing in another lineman to kind of help the room in terms of bringing in a guy with more experience. They're definitely, like I mentioned with the Dillard news, they're definitely going to address this in the offseason. There's just no way that Howie Roseman leaves the NFL draft without an offensive lineman coming, and they're already going to be looking to pick people up in the offseason in free agency. They're going to be scouring the trade market, and that's just what Roseman does, and you can bank that he'll be looking for more coming to this season, because you probably have the 5 starters penciled in, but you could do well to make sure you're covered in terms in the event that one of them were to go down. And obviously the Eagles offensive linemen, have been in and out of the lineup all year. So it's going to be crucial. It's going to be very, very crucial. And the last little piece of news here, defensive end Brandon Graham. BG will be re-signing with the Eagles in lieu of testing free agency. I believe it's a multi-year deal, a 2-year deal, so he will be under contract. I could see him retiring after this deal in a Philadelphia Eagle uniform. He mentioned how, there's no place he really would ever rather be. This is his home's here. His kids are, in school, blah, 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 all that. This is his home, and he wasn't really interested in leaving at this point of his career, which you just got to respect. I mean, BG, an absolute stud, just a great guy in the community from everything we've seen. Just the people he's touched, the type of personality he is also in the locker room. I can imagine his number 55 gets hung up in the rafters when it's all said and done, especially after, making the biggest play in Eagles history, strip sacking Tom Brady in Super Bowl 52. Just an absolute legend in the midnight green, and it's going to be good just to have him back. He had 11 double-digit sacks after coming off an Achilles injury in 2021. In 2021. So there's just not enough good things to say about Brandon Graham. It'll be great. He'll be more depth for that defensive line, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to play at a high level for, the duration of this deal. So that's going to kind of be the main moves. That the Eagles have happened so far. Like I mentioned, James Bradbury, Gardner Johnson, Kazir White. These guys, Fletcher Cox, still a free agent who potentially might come back. You got these guys. There's still a lot to be out there. Isaac Seumalo, like I mentioned, still a free agent. He's probably going to be gone. But you got these guys who could still end up in a midnight green jersey and could still do really, really well. So from that standpoint, there's still a lot to see as we go through the off season. But right now, just kind of celebrating the birds from last year who had career years and cashed in on big paydays. I mean, it's really great to see those guys do that, and hopefully, they don't. Hopefully, Hargrave doesn't have too many free shots at Jalen Hurts next year, or T.J. Edwards in the case that we do see them. So that will be an interesting thing to monitor. Another thing to monitor and a silver lining from these players is that with the Eagles losing so many free agents this season, they're going to be receiving a ton of compensatory picks in the 2024 draft. So real quick before I get into that, compensatory picks. I had to do a little research myself to figure out what this actually was. But basically what compensatory picks, what they are designated selections in the next year's draft that are awarded based off specific personnel changes. This includes net loss of compensatory free agents or hiring of minority employees as a head coach or general manager for another team. The NFL has this formula that they use to account for a player's average salary per year, snap count, and postseason awards. So basically, a guy in Javon Hargrave had a phenomenal year, double-digit sacks, all the case, plus what he is making now, 4 years, $80 million. You can expect the Eagles are going to get a pretty good compensatory pick. So what they do is they fall between the 3rd round and the 7th round. And, more than likely, the Eagles will get a compensatory 3rd round pick in next year's draft because they lost Javon Hargrave. I'm not sure how it works with Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen, both now head coaches in the NFL, obviously not minorities, so I don't know how that'll work out. Obviously, we still have some more research to do on that front, but a CJ Gardner-Johnson, if he signs a big 4-year, $70 million deal with another team, led the league in interceptions this year and, did really well. So you expect another compensatory pick there. Obviously, Isaac Seumalo, if he gets a big deal. TJ Edwards, he got it. Like, the Eagles are probably going to get somewhere between 4, 5, maybe even 6 compensatory picks next year. So what that does for this year is it makes picks more expendable, right? So the 2nd and 3rd round pick, the 2 7ths that we have this year, might be moved. You could see these picks being moved because of the amount. They could probably have 10, 11, 12 picks in the draft next year based off, what happens. And also next year's draft, like I already mentioned, they already have 7 or 8 picks in next year's draft. So the Saints' second rounder in 2024, that could be expendable if you're talking about moving the needle in a trade. The number of other picks the Eagles have. So that's where I think that Howie's going to be really aggressive. They know that they already have some guys coming off the books that they're going to get some picks back for. So this is very, very early in the offseason. Obviously, the legal tampering period opened today, so I wanted to get on as a number of Eagles-related news came out and just kind of keep it updated as we move on. So that is a silver lining that we do need to keep in mind to maybe soften the blow of potentially big free agents leaving Philadelphia. But other than that, we're expecting some good news on the Gardner Johnson front. And as we go through the rest of the offseason, you can be sure that we're going to be here to cover all the free agent moves that happen. We're going to have a pod coming out later this week where we tackle more of the free agent moves from an entire NFL's perspective. So definitely stay tuned for that. And for right now, it's just going to be Eagles stuff. So we'll get back to more of it as free agency unfolds. All right, everyone, that is going to do it for the show today. Once again, please check the description below for all our social media handles. Feel free to shoot us any questions and we'll answer it on the show. We'll do a mailbag show. What the rest of the week's going to look like, we're going to have a March Madness preview coming out tomorrow. We're also going to have our annual MLB preview series begin on Wednesday this week. We're really, really excited about that. We're going to get it recorded on Wednesday and then have it come out in the subsequent days. And then we're also, like I'm going to mention, have a general NFL free agency preview later this week. So huge week for the Noah Gillian show, and definitely make sure to stay tuned for all the great content. Thank you guys once again for tuning in, and we can't wait to see you back here again next time.